Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is Bad Boys, the buddy cop classic that launched the movie careers of stars Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, as well as director Michael Bay, resulting in a blockbuster action franchise that is still going strong to this day. Joining me today to talk about Bad Boys, Jason St. Germain, video editor at Joe Blow, and the host of Nerd Cage Live, a celebration of all things pop culture that is available on YouTube, Twitch, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm going to have the links to everything regarding Nerd Cage Live in the show notes below. I encourage everyone to check out Nerd Cage Live on YouTube and Twitch and subscribe and follow. They cover everything from movies to gaming and TV and everything in between there. And I'm glad to say that one of the co-founders of Nerd Cage Live, Jason St. Germain, is with me right now. Jason, how are you?
Hey, very, very good, Matt. Thanks for having me on. Very honored, very thrilled to talk about one of my favorite action movies of all time. Well, action franchises of all time, Bad Boys.
Bad Boys, 30 years from April 17, 1995 is when Bad Boys came out. So we got 30 years now when it came out. And this is a really interesting movie for me because maybe you're like in the same, I'm not sure, Enrique, if we're in the same kind of age bracket or not, but for me, the Will Smith experience for me growing up was TV. Fresh Prince of
Mhm.
Bel-Air. Here in Australia, it used to be on every like early evening, around 5 o'clock or so. Watch it religiously, loved it. And the first kind of movie experience I had with Will Smith wasn't this movie. It was a movie called So it's called Made in America. It's a movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson, and he was a small role, comedic, but I never ever foresaw Will Smith, the action star, coming to us, and that's something that Bad Boys did. When I watched it, it wasn't at the cinemas though. The first time I watched it was on video, because I remember specifically the first Will Smith action movie I saw was Independence Day that came out in '96. And I think Bad Boys I watched like later on that year on video. And I was like, oh, what's this movie? I haven't heard of this before. And I fell in love with it when I watched it because I love a good buddy cop movie. I love really good chemistry between the leads, and that's what we got with this film. Do you remember, Jason, the first time you saw Bad Boys? Was it in the theater? Was it on video, streaming? When was the first time you came on your radar?
Absolutely. It was actually on video, because obviously, so I'm 38. So back in 1995, I was, 8 going on 9. But like you, I grew up at that time. I was watching, me and my sister were watching Family Matters and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and a lot of other
Yep.
TV shows. Then, now I wasn't aware of Martin. Like, I didn't watch the TV show Martin. I watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was everything in my household. So 1996 Independence Day comes out. Keep in mind that's PG-13. So I had
Yep.
access to. We actually saw Independence Day in theaters opening weekend as a family because the hype cycle for Independence Day was huge, and I
Huge.
mean huge. Yeah. So, but I did fall in love with Martin Lawrence's movies. Um, Blue Streak, Big Mama's House,
I
Nothing to
think
Lose.
my favorite is
Uh,
Life, the one he made with Eddie Murphy. I love that movie.
Yeah, yeah. But at that time, like I was really into Martin Lawrence, and then finally, I believe it was just as I was in I think I was in 6th grade. That's when I discovered Bad Boys, and I rented it at the library, a local library, and I saw the movie, and I'm like, whoa, how did this one slip by me? Obviously, with it being rated R, I wasn't able to see that in theaters, but anyway, I discovered Bad Boys at the library, fell in love with it, and then lo and behold, a year or two later, that's when the sequel. I saw the commercial during the Super Bowl for Bad Boys 2, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like prime and ready for this because it was like perfect timing because I already seen the first one and whatnot. So yeah, that's how it all came together. Uh but yeah, it was on the library circuit, the rent, just back when movie rentals were a huge deal.
Hmm.
Now we sound old.
Huge deal. And even at that time, like, I think we probably watched it probably on, just before the kind of DVD kind of explosion kind of hit. So it was all like video cassettes and stuff. And that's I remember watching that clearly on video because I remember the cover and everything that came with it. Interestingly though, just reading about this movie, this was a really troubled production. I mean, this script was around for a while. So you have Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. They were kind of like the producing team in the 80s. They had Top Gun, Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop, all these huge kind of films. And Bad Boys was supposed to be their kind of like big comeback movie because they did Days of Thunder that came out in 1990. And the expectation for that movie was that, well, at least Paramount Pictures at least wanted to have like a Top Gun 2 in regards to cultural and financial impact. And Days of Thunder, for all the love I have for that film, it doesn't match what Top Gun does in a lot of ways, even though they try to replicate the formula. And so that troubled production of the film and the underwhelming kind of response to it really led to Bruckheimer Simpson like being in a wilderness for a while in regards to movies because Bad Boys was their big comeback project. They signed a deal, I think it was with Disney. They had multiple scripts there. Bad Boys was supposed to be the big comeback vehicle. Interestingly, this was a movie that was made to star Dana Carvey and John Lovitz. And the original title of the movie was called Bulletproof Heart. Um, could you imagine Dana Carvey and John Lovitz, as big as they were in the early 90s, in like a buddy cop movie? Because that sounds like a really kind of interesting kind of like filmmaking thinking, even for I'm sure in the early 90s because they were known for their SNL stuff. And I just can't see kind of like Dana Carvey like, doing the rolling action kind of like scenes with like, gun toting kind of stuff. I don't know how they're going to pull that off. It's a very interesting kind of tidbit right there.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. No, that no way that would have worked. I think they found the right formula with Will and Martin. I think what makes those two special is the chemistry.
Yeah.
And I don't think the chemistry of the previous actors you just mentioned, I don't think that chemistry would have worked. I feel like to this day, which is why getting a I'm assuming we're getting a fifth movie at this point,
Mm.
is the chemistry between those two, their banter. Uh Even though they're opposites, but they're like brothers, but they're like opposites given their lifestyle. And it's just like I said, there's a dynamic, there's a special dynamic between those two.
And what's really interesting about having Will Smith and Martin Lawrence being in this movie, and you mentioned before Martin Lawrence had a show called Martin, which I also didn't know much about. I don't think it was showing here in Australia at the time. I definitely don't think it was. I mean, we did get a lot of film stuff, well, shows from the States. You mentioned before Family Matters. It used to be like every weekend, Family Matters, step by step. What was the one with Trey? Was it? What was the one with the one set in Chicago? And it was the cousin and his it's a guy and his cousin Balky, the bloke from Beverly Hills Cop. It wasn't Trading Places. I forgot what the movie was called, or what show was
Oh,
called. Oh,
I know it's the part of that
per
TGIF lineup on ABC.
Perfect Strangers, I think it might have been called. Perfect
Yes,
Strangers. Yes,
that's
that
it.
one. That was big as well. But Martin didn't come across to our shore. So I think a lot of exposure to Martin and Lawrence in Australia was the Bad Boys movie. But they were both TV stars. And the process of getting two TV stars like on one movie is really kind of interesting. I mean, you did see kind of people before that, like Bruce Willis, for example, he did Moonlighting and such, but that was like just the one guy who was surrounded by, all these kind of character actors. Stuff to have two TV stars show up in this big action thing. These days you can see it because TV is so different than it was back then. But yeah, it's just really kind of interesting dynamic. It had a interesting way how they got there and the process of which is really interesting. So we have the Dana Carvey, John Lovitz thing, right? Dana Carvey has signed on to the film. He hangs out with Don Simpson. So I don't know if people out there know much about Don Simpson in the Bruckheimer Simpson thing. This guy was a madman. He's passed away. He passed away in late 1995, like 6 months after Bad Boys came out. He was a madman, like the drug use, the excess, like anything you could think 80s Hollywood excess and extravagance. This guy lived it. And Harvey's hanging out with Don Simpson for like a weekend, and Carvey's freaked out by Don Simpson and like all the stuff he does to the point where he's like, "Fuck this! The script's not good. These guys are nut. I'm not going to sign on to this anymore." So they lose Dana Carvey, they lose John Lovitz. Then they go to Martin Lawrence. He's got this big show. They sign him on. So now they've got to figure out who they're going to pair with him. Martin Lawrence. So first they go to Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall says no. And he says it's the biggest regret of his career back then. Again, I can imagine why it would have
Yeah.
been a big role for him. Martin Lawrence wanted Eddie Murphy. He turned it down. They're looking at Wesley Snipes. He turned it down. And then this is where things get kind of complicated because there are like three different stories as to how Will Smith came on board. So the Martin Lawrence story is that his sister says to him, "Hey, there's this show called Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You should watch it. I think he'll be really good to work with." And from through that recommendation, Martin Lawrence advocates for Will Smith. He comes on. However, Bruckheimer and Michael Bay, who have been on a project for a while now, they both say that they're the ones that got Will Smith on board. So there's a little bit of jockeying back and forth as to the credit of who got him on board. But either way, it works magically because you say chemistry is the key here. And I think when it comes to buddy cop movies, that's the number one thing you need to have. Your two leads, whether it be Gibson and Glover, whether it be, Judge Reinhold and John Ashton along with Eddie Murphy, what have you, that has to work so well in there. And I like to think that the comic sensibilities of both guys is the key to why it works so well. They weren't action stars, they were comedic stars, but the comedy in the film, I think, is the strength of the movie, not so much action. What do you think when you think of Bad Boys? Do you think of Bad Boys 1 more as a comedy that works as an action movie or an action movie that works as a comedy? So it's a really kind of interesting kind of balance between the two.
I would have to say comedy action. It's just I think as the movies went on, like the more so the second one was like action packed, like nonstop.
Yeah.
I think this one the action's not more. I hate to say the word tame, because I really think the second one just went way over the top. Which, by the way, it's my favorite one of the four of them thus far.
Mm.
Um, I think this one, I mean, this is when we're really beginning to learn. Like, this is the movie we get to learn who they are, and I think that's where the comedy comes in first. Also, not to mention the one thing I want to point out too is, as you mentioned, some of the other buddy cop films. This particular film, this is where we see a younger
Yes.
buddy cop duel compared to the other ones. Another 40, we got 48 hours. They were already, Nick Nolte was really old. Even at that time, he was old. Lethal Weapon, Danny Glover was the old one. Like, Beverly Hills Cop, okay, at the time, Eddie Murphy was young, but this time we have two young, up and coming guys. So the appeal works for like people like us at the time. It has more appeal for us the younger generation than it does like the old heads. I mean, not were the old heads for these movies, but at the time, like I feel like what made this movie stand out more than the other buddy cop movies is that they're younger, more energetic, and it was easier for people like us to gravitate to.
I totally agree with that. It's kind of like I think Will Smith in particular, like for our generation, he was kind of like our movie star. Growing up
Yeah,
watching him, because we watched him on TV. We were along for that Fresh Prince journey, and then we watched Bad Boys, Independence Day. I mean, the streak that he had, Bad Boys, Independence Day, Men in Black, and then Bad Boys 2. I mean, that just really just thrust him into this career as the next big blockbuster kind of action hero kind of guy. And then he does Ali and starts getting the dramatic stuff under his wings as well. And I think it's a really important kind of like point that you make is that, you know, when you have a young stars in a movie, um, it's a big risk. It really is. I think these days people like our film studios are more reluctant to maybe put like a big action tentpole behind younger stars unless there's like it's based on like an IP or a property or something. But this was like an original idea, original script, not so much an original formula. But
Yeah.
to have these two young guys in there, because I think they're like both in their mid 20s. Maybe Will Smith was maybe like 23, 24 at the time when he did this movie. I think that kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to call it um what's the word I'm looking for? Uh Fashionable, I guess at the time. I think they were both kind of like fashionable leading men at the time. Um and just the very fact that they had their own TV shows as well, really spoke to how people could transition from watching their TV stars on film, because usually it doesn't work. People with TV, if TV actors were TV actors, film actors were film actors. Crossover hardly happened. People have tried many times, but once in a while you get a Bruce Willis, once in a while you get a Will Smith, and this one absolutely worked. And I like to think that there was a certain cultural kind of shift happening there, and I think that kind of almost in a way kind of set the tone of what we kind of I've seen what we see now, which that the back and forth between the two different mediums, it's flows much better now. Streaming, of course, helps with that. But this kind of proved that, hey, you can take not only a young star, but a comedic star, and put it into a different kind of genre in a different medium as well, in film, like the big screen stuff, and it'll work. And I can't think of, ever since then, I really can't think of another actor kind of transitioned that way from like TV to movie the way that Will Smith had in here. I mean, is there anyone that comes to mind in regards to that over the last, say, 20, 30 years that managed to pull that off?
Not only that, but musician. I mean,
Yes.
we have to remind people Will Smith, was obviously the Fresh Prince and DJ
I
Jeff, and
keep
then
forgetting about that. I know.
so now that Will Smith made the transition from TV to movies, but from music to TV to movies, like he
Yeah.
made, like he was an icon in like every medium, and like I and then there's been other great musicians turn out. I mean, Madonna, Lady Gaga. Um,
Mark Wahlberg.
there's only a small handful of musicians that make that transition to film and do it so well. And as far as I know, Will Smith is the only one that won an Oscar, and he
Hmm.
started in music.
Yeah. I mean, is
So
it
that's one thing I want to point out too. So don't forget.
I always forget about that because it's been a while. I mean, I'm not really, like you and I, we're fellow metalheads, so we're like into that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know what Will Smith has released in regards to music in the last, since like the
Well,
Men in
he
Black
just put
soundtrack.
out a
I'm
new
sure.
album last
I did
last
he?
week. Yep,
All right.
and I
Okay.
guess didn't do well. I mean, I think at this point, I hate to say that his music career is dead now, but it's. I think he needs to stick. I think he needs to stick to film. I don't think he can. I think it's too late for him to go back to music. It's just not. The days of getting jiggy with it is long behind us.
I always loved the stuff he did with DJ Jazzy Jeff. There was that one song
Yeah,
he did. It was definitely before when Bad Boys came out. Boom Shake the Room. I remember that song came out. That was huge. I remember being a 12-year-old and that song came out, and every kid in the playground knew the lyrics of that song. It was a huge song at that time. I remember that one.
he's the first rapper to win a Grammy.
Is that
Parents
right?
just don't.
That's right. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, I
parents just
get
don't
you.
understand. He was the first rapper to win a Grammy, and then of course, my favorite Fresh Prince Jazzy Jeff song is "A Nightmare on My Street," um, the Freddy Krueger song. Oh my god, that I have to listen to that every now and then, especially like around Halloween. So, but yeah, it's just it's just crazy to knowing like hey, don't forget, this guy was a musician first.
I mean, the thing about Will Smith that's just how you laid everything out. He was a cultural phenomenon. He really was. And I think that it led up to this moment where he was going to win that Oscar. Or it was the stars were aligned. It finally made it to that part, and that would have been the perfect kind of thing. And of course, what happened. The whole Chris Rock incident happened, and then that
Yeah.
star fell so much. And not to say that, I mean, Bad Boys 4, which came out after, I'm pretty sure it was after the whole Oscars thing,
Yes.
still
Yes, it
did pretty well at the box office. However, I don't know whether he has the cachet anymore to lead a movie that isn't already an established IP of his past. Like if they did like, I don't know, Men in Black, what would be up to now, four or whatever. Maybe that might work, but it was like a whole new property. I don't know if people have the same kind of love they had for him before, because not only was he like a, you know, popular, but he was a beloved kind of guy as well. He was like known as one of the Hollywood nice guys as well. And that one incident, kind of very public incident as well, like live TV, biggest, night of nights in the movie industry, just really derailed all this kind of hard work he had before that. It kind of tainted a lot of stuff, which I think is a shame because rewatching Bad Boys, I go back to that time of when that movie came out and just how much he was beloved. And that road all the way up to, King Richard and all the stuff in between there. But it just goes to show sometimes if you're in the game long enough, sometimes you know, these things are going to catch up to you. I never thought it would catch up to Will Smith. I always thought he was kind of scandal-less when I was especially during his time, because he lasted so long without any scandals whatsoever, and then all of a sudden, here we go, Oscar night, and he does what he does. Do
I
you
mean,
think?
I believe he'll come back from it. It's gonna be he'll come back from it. If anybody can come back from that, it's him. And let's be real, there are far worse things that other actors and other scandals out there. There are far worse things that other actors have done out there that compared to what he done.
Right,
And we saw what he did. Um, so I don't think his career will ever be what it was during the whole Independence Day to Ali stretch there when he was the biggest actor and the highest paid actor in the world. But I do think he'll come back from this. I just don't think it'll ever be at that hype. I don't think he'll ever be like dead in the water. I
right.
think he'll have other hits. I mean, I'm pretty sure Bad Boys 5 is on the way. He's bound to get another big movie that that could turn out to be a hit. I'm already hearing rumblings of Hancock 2 has already been
Mm.
kind of been put out there in the stratosphere. Um, and I'm sure, just a hunch, he'll get another Oscar nomination at some point. Do I think he'll win another one? No. In my opinion, no. I could be wrong. Do I think he'll get nominated again? Yeah, I think so. So I don't think like this as bizarre and crazy as that slap that shook the multiverse. I I think it was a little blown out of proportion. That's just my opinion. I mean, did it make him look weak? Yeah, but I don't know. I think there are far worse out there. You and I know this. I mean, we're movie buffs.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. I think maybe a comeback for him might be going back to TV again. Maybe another kind of show, not Fresh Prince, but maybe a different type of show. Kind of go back to the roots there and do something like I don't know, kind of like what I'm not comparing their careers in any way, but you kind of see what kind of Tim Allen does. He does like he has a new show every kind of 5, 10 years, but it's kind of like a riff on the old show. It's a different show, but it's the same kind of vibe. And I think maybe recapturing that kind of vibe that Will Smith had, that made him so beloved in the first place, might be something in the stars for him. I mean, you mentioned the music career. I had no idea he had an album coming out now. But then again, I'm not seeking out Will Smith music and such. But it is really interesting. I don't think we're going to see the franchise player that he was before, though. I think that the guy who led the movie, did the first song in the movie, the film clip came out, all that stuff. I think that kind of gone. Or maybe that's just how it is in the industry anyway. I don't think maybe that kind of thing is gone anyway. Going back to 1995 though, another player in this Bad Boy saga we got to talk about is Michael Bay. So this is his debut film. So before this, he was a huge music film music, sorry, video clip music director, right? Did stuff for Madonna, a whole bunch of stuff. So he does this movie. Um, when it comes to the legacy of Michael Bay, I mean, if you're going to put together like if you're going to put together a box set of Michael Bay movies, right? Say I give you three, three
Yeah,
disc Michael Bay movie, right? Bad Boys in there, do you think? First one?
absolutely. I put at least one Bad Boys film, one Transformers film, and I would put The Rock in there too. That's just
Ah,
me.
nice. Very cool. Very cool. Supposedly though, with this film, remember we were talking before about the balance between comedy and action, why comedy stands out more than action does. So we have a budget of around $19 million here. And so Michael Bay's fighting a lot of different fronts. He's fighting against Bruckheimer and Simpson because he's constantly saying, I need more money, I need more money, I need more money. They have a 2 month shoot. He's got these huge, big action scenes. We all know what Michael Bay is as a director. He's like, he loves these huge kind of spectacle, sweeping camera, blow everything up, kind of like almost like a American Western equivalent of like kind of like a John Woo film kind of thing. You know, he needs like those big kind of things. He doesn't have it. Supposedly, the last scene in the movie, the huge kind of shootout in the hangar, he actually gave up some of his own salary to shoot specific shots in that movie because he's like, I need an explosion here, I need stuff here. And even though the rushes were good, Sony Pictures, which are taken to the movie at this time, they were like, we can't give you any extra money. Simpson and Bruckheimer were really more interested in doing Crimson Tide at the time because they had like that was Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman. So he kind of like took things on and but to this day, even though the movie was a big success and it's much beloved, he says that he can't watch the movie because he doesn't like the final cut of it because there's so much stuff that he wanted to do that he couldn't do. I'd imagine though that Bad Boys 2, which had much bigger budget, went for like an hour longer and had all these actions set pieces, like huge action set pieces as well in multiple countries. I think they're in Cuba, they're in Miami, they're all over the place. That would have been like he's kind of like him saying, yeah, now we can party. Now I got house money and we can party kind of thing. Um, but I think it's kind of interesting to think that where this movie kind of lacks in action, the comedic scenes kind of make up for it. And supposedly the script was dog shit. Michael Bay hated it, and he just had Will Smith and Martin Lawrence improvise every day,
Yeah.
every morning. They'll go and they'll improvise, and I think you can see that. We are talking about chemistry before.
Yes, exactly.
It's you can sometimes you feel like a script is just made tailor-made for certain actors. In this case, the actors made the material made the movie for them, which I think is kind of very rare in a lot of aspects to have such a young cast. You talk about how young they are, they come from TV, they're with working first time with this director, and Michael Bay's pretty much, I'm giving you guys the ball. You can make up the words here, and I think it kind of works really well. I think that's the best thing about the dynamic between them two back and forth is I think is the best thing about the movie, hands down.
Absolutely. And I think that's where their TV and comedy careers come into play. I mean, Martin Lawrence, you got to understand one thing, too, I forgot to mention. Martin Lawrence is also coming off a pretty major stand-up comedy film, which was
Yeah,
called Martin Lawrence, You're So Crazy. Um, so you gotta think that Martin Lawrence has had a lot of experience writing, not writing jokes and writing for his comedy, writing for his show. Will Smith had, I'm sure had some kind of experience with not so much writing the Fresh Prince, but improvising. So that's where the two of them are gifted in that aspect. There is that I think, and Michael Bay knew that more than Brockheimer and everybody else, saying like, "Hey, you know, do what you gotta do to make this, sound better. Write
yeah.
this to make it better. Do what you gotta do to make this better." And that's where I think that's where their talents really shine.
One of the my favorite parts in the movie was supposedly all improvised, like dialogue wise. It's the scene after the big club scene and car chase. They go to a service station and they go to the counter, and the guy behind the counter yells out the now iconic line, three's mother bitches, which again, improvised. That wasn't in any script or whatever. They made it up then. And so the response by Will Smith, where they in one was where pull out their guns and give me a pack of fruit bubblicious and Skittles,
Yeah.
all improvised as well. all improvised as well, which I think is just terrific because I think, when it comes to some of these films, and iconic moments in cinema history, we take these lines and they become part of pop culture, and we think to ourselves, that's really good writing. But a lot of times it's just the actors themselves kind of like coming up with stuff. Like the whole we're gonna need a bigger boat from Jaws. That's famously like a very improvised kind of line by Roy Scheider in that film. And this movie just has so many of them. What are some of your favorite moments in this movie between these two actors throughout Bad Boys?
Obviously, I love it when because the movie's called Bad Boys, and yes, I watched Cops growing up.
Yeah.
Anytime they were like singing the song, it was just funny. I mean, they do basically at the beginning of each movie, they sing the song and whatnot. And it's funny as hell. Um, I actually love the scene where like obviously Martin's kind of like going undercover, or I should say Martin Lawrence's character, he's going undercover as Will Smith's character, Mike Larry. Marcus is going undercover as Mike Larry, and he's got to pretend to be Mike. He's his family guy, but you know, he's got to pretend that he's like a bachelor and stuff like that. And he's trying to like he's hanging in this woman's apartment protecting her, but she starts hitting on him, and he doesn't want to cheat on his wife. I
Yeah.
don't know. I thought that was pretty hilarious because he was just so bad at like trying to pretend to be Mike, and it was just so. I mean, it's just a joke that the audience knows, but the woman doesn't know, and I think it's just kind of funny that they kind of let the audience know, let in the audience on the joke, and it's just so funny how he's just trying to be this this bachelor cop, and he can't pull it off. It's just so funny. It's just only Martin Lawrence could just act that goofy, and we can kind of laugh at him and laugh with him at the same time. And I love that in this movie.
And what's really cool about how he does that is how he pronounces Michael Lowry. He's like, I'm Michael Lowry, Michael Lowry, trying to find his inner cool. And I don't know about you, but I think for years and years after watching that, especially at my high school, everyone's just going around going Michael Lowry, Michael Lowry. It's a simple thing, but something that just sticks in your head. And I think that's a really kind of a special talent that Lawrence has with a lot of the stuff that he does in this movie. Not only does he do that great stuff with the dialogue, but the physical comedy in this movie is quite good. Like one of my favorite
Yeah.
scenes is when Will Smith is talking to one of his informants in the gym, and he's talking to her, and Martin Lawrence is in the gym and he's trying to, do a barbell press. He's getting crushed in his chest. He's trying to do shadow boxing. He's falling over everywhere. The
Yep.
funny thing about that is that even though he looks like he's incredibly goofy and not athletic whatsoever, he was actually when he was younger, a mid-Atlantic Golden Gloves fighter, boxing fighter when he was younger. So he
Oh.
knows how to fight. He knows how to move and such. But because he can take that and look really clumsy, and of course he just looking at the size of him, it just looks like a string bean as well. And play into that, it's really good. I think that he's almost kind of like a chihuahua in a kind of way, kind of like the overconfidence, like everyone outsizes him, but he's not afraid to bark and even bite once in a while. There's that other scene where he's talking to they have someone from a prison hack into the police records because they're trying to find some file. And the actor is played by, and the actor is John Sally, who was a former NBA player. He played for the Bad Boy Pistons, which is a funny occurrence here. They were known as the Bad Boys.
Yeah.
Um, and Martin Lawrence gets in his face, and John Sally stands up. John Sally's 7 foot. Martin Lawrence must be like 5 foot 2.
Yeah.
And just the way that Michael Bay has the angle of just Martin Lawrence looking up at the camera and just fucking telling him off. He's like, you sit your ass down before yours. I think he's just fantastic. I just love the overconfidence that he has, not only as a character, but the way that he which and by all regards, like he as a person is incredibly humble and such, but the way he can just put that persona on screen, I think is just a fantastic throughout the movie. And a lot of there's a reason why a lot of the best comedic scenes in the film has to do with him. I think he's like the impetus a lot of times, that kind of brash overconfidence that he has, and the reactions, physical comedy and everything else he has to the situation that he's placed in. I think it's just is a really kind of like something that really drives a lot of the movie in Bad Boys.
And I think the unsung hero of these movies too is we got to mention Joey Pants.
Oh
Like
yes.
Joe Pantoliano is just well. I mean, first and foremost, he's great in everything he does. He has that it factor. Um, I think he's had a very underrated career. But I think I mean maybe I'm biased because I love these movies so much. But I mean other than Bound, I think Joey Pants is absolutely at his best in these movies. I mean, just being the police captain, and the short tempered potty mouth police captain, and just the way he always yells at the two of them. It's it's just so funny because I think that's another thing we can everyone can relate to is I think we've all had that boss that not so much like the boss we don't like, but the boss that always that I think we've all had that boss that short tempered boss that yells a lot. I think we've all been there, and I just think Joe Pantoliano just makes it's just that much funnier when because
I love
it's
Joe
just
Pantoliano. But I mean, around that time as well, he was really on fire. I mean, he's been in movies for a long time. He was in Risky Business back in 1983. Prolific
yeah.
actor, TV, screen. But in this time in the 90s is when like he really found like he's kind of like this is when he became like from Joe Pantoliano to Joey Pant. This is when the transition happens because not only have The Fugitive comes out in 93, then you have this in 95, Bound comes out the year after that, Matrix 99, then you had Memento
Yeah, The
in 2000,
Sopranos.
and then between all this you had The Sopranos where he plays Ralphie, who has to
Yeah.
be hands down one of the most beloved, but at the same time, incredibly kind of hated actor character
That's when the
throughout that,
show
and
peaked.
that says something as well.
That's when The Sopranos peaked because the last
Yeah,
three or so years of The Sopranos were not good. I mean, that's another thing that I mean that was a phenomenon. That was a TV phenomenon, by the way.
yeah,
Um, but I think The Sopranos were at its absolute best when Joe Pantoliano was on the show.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think so too. And don't forget, another Sopranos alum is in this movie as well. Michael Imperioli plays Jojo, the informant, in the film.
Mhm.
So a bunch of Sopranos actors in this film as well. And then you got other great actors here. And we've got to mention as well Tia Leone, who kind of plays the straight, I guess a straight man or I guess a straight woman in this three person dynamic. She's kind of like the witness to this crime
Yeah.
that's going to lead to this huge drug bust throughout the film. I mean, she has to hold her own between like two really kind of skilled kind of actors here, and I think she does a pretty good job in the film as well. Supposedly, they wanted Marissa Tomei to be in the film. She didn't want to do it, so went to Taya Leone. But this was also kind of like the start of Taya Leone is kind of like a bit of a star as well because she had Deep Impact. I think came out the year before this, or maybe the year after. I'm just trying to. Well, actually, I think Deep Impact was 98. So you had this film, Deep Impact, then she had her own bunch of TV shows as well come around this time. So yeah, she's really great in the film as well. Um, I just want to also talk about another great scene in the movie, the opening scene, where they're in the Porsche. Martin Lawrence is having his burger and chips, and Will Smith, Michael Lowry isn't liking this, and then there's an attempt at carjacking. So supposedly that they shot that weeks after production finished because the Bruckheimer, Simpson, and Bay are watching the movie and they're like, we need something to get them going and introduce the car, introduce these two guys in a really they want a more kind of comedic way. I think the heist was kind of like the first thing that kind of like started the film originally. They wanted something beforehand. Again, going back to Michael Bay kind of using his own money and resources, the Porsche 911 that's at the start of the movie, his car. It's his car that they use in the film because
Oh,
um,
I did not know.
Sony didn't want to give any money, and supposedly they went to Porsche to ask for like a sponsorship kind of deal, kind of thing, like in film marketing, and they said no as well. But supposedly after this movie, because of the Porsche 911 and the car chase at the end, sales for Porsches went right up again. So you know, Porsche did get a little something out of that film. So this movie releases. It's like I said, $19 million budget. It makes $140 million at the box office. Um, Phenomenal. It's a phenom. It really is. And really, like as we talked about before, it really sets the stage for Will Smith, action hero, blockbuster star, Martin Lawrence becoming a movie star as well in his own right. Not to the heights that Will Smith will have, of course, but He'll have a string of movies. You named a whole bunch of them just before. But I think what's kind of interesting about this movie is that even though you get the sequel, what, two, was it 1999, 98, so maybe 2, 3 years later, could be later,
Oh, you
I'm
talking
not
about Bad
100%.
Boys 2?
Bad Boys 2, yeah. What was that? Was that
It
98,
was
99?
2003.
2003, 8 years. Wow.
2003.
Damn, I forgot about it as well. Then you have Bad Boys 2 to Bad Boys 3 must have been around 17 years or so, right? Wasn't Bad Boys 3 like 2020 or 2021 when that came out?
2020. 2020.
2020. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Huge gap in between there. And what's interesting to me is that between Bad Boys 2, let's just look at that timeline, Bad Boys 2 to the third Bad Boys movie. Um, what's happening to the buddy action comedy at that time? I can't think of any movies that really picked up the slack in between there. And the only one I can really think of, which I think owes a lot to the Bad Boys movies, is Fast and Furious. I think that's a
Rush
movie that
Hour.
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour
Yes,
3. The third Rush Hour came out in 2007.
right.
We've been hearing rumblings about Rush Hour 4. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but yeah, I would say, yeah, you're right. Fast and Furious definitely owes to this movie for sure. Rush Hour 1 came after coincidentally, Rush Hour 1 came out in 1998,
Mm,
not too long after this.
right.
And again, a black comedian, Chris Tucker. Jackie Chan's, was finally becoming a star in America. But yeah, from like Bad Boys 3 onward, from like 2003, or Bad Boys 2 in 2003 onward, yeah, the only buddy cop movie we had that was like a major one was we had Rush Hour 3, which honestly wasn't as good as the other two, and then you said Fast and the Furious, and um
I think maybe like
it's kind of mind-boggling that we waited so long for Bad Boys 3, because it wasn't like Bad Boys 2 was a hit.
it
Like,
was.
it was a
I,
major hit.
I think what it could have been, in just looking back at it, is that Will Smith was kind of like all in more as a dramatic actor than an action actor maybe at the time. Maybe he
Yeah.
wanted to just focus on that kind of stuff. And like I said, like he was just such an institution at that time. I'm sure he had all types of offers coming left or right. And I think Bad Boys 3 coming out when it did is kind of like perfect timing for Will Smith, because at the time the star was waning. And the movie did well. People loved it. Marlon Lawrence, though, is a even more interesting kind of thing, because even though he had like a string of movies after, in between Bad Boys 1 and Bad Boys 2, he didn't really do much that I can remember in up to Bad Boys 3. I mean, he had a lot of medical issues and stuff that he had? Was it like his health was happening there? Or wait, am I just missing down on a chunk of his career here? Because I can't think of anything he really did in between those.
Yeah, I forgot exactly what it was. And he I mean, outside, and then he didn't really have any I mean, he really wasn't put out any hits anymore. I mean, you can say the Bad Mom, or Big Mama's House movies, kind
Right.
of kept him afloat, but I just feel like without Bad Boys, I mean, I don't know if Martin Lawrence would still have a career right now, if I want the honest truth. He's actually it's just funny, something we covered on Joe Blow is he just voiced the movie Sneaks. Um
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. That's a new animated film coming. Is that a Netflix thing, is it?
yeah, and not only that, but because I do I'm the one that runs the interview channel on Joe Blow, and the I just discovered the revelation yesterday while I was not well, I shouldn't say editing, but overseeing the interviews. Martin Lawrence just came out and said that Blue Streak 2 is on the way.
Wow. Okay. Did that
Yeah, they're
have
working. He said they're working on the script.
is that
He's
with
like,
Chappelle? Was that Chappelle in that one?
yeah, yeah. That's the one movie where that's the movie like I want to go back to. That's the one movie I want to know what that character's doing right now. So yeah. Um yeah, I thought Blue Streak outside Bad Boys is actually one of his better films, honestly. Yeah. So And
I'm
of
just
course,
looking
everybody.
here at his filmography. You had you just mentioned Blue Streak, the Big Bummers House movies, Life with Eddie Murphy. Absolutely loved that film. I think it's fantastic. Outside of that though, you had kind of like more kind of family fare, Wild Hogs, um, which yeah is what it is. College Road Trip, I think it was like
Yeah,
a
yeah. A
Disney
lot of these
thing.
comedians, when they get older, they stop doing the raunchy movies and they do more of the. I mean, we saw Eddie Murphy do it, where
Yeah,
they start doing these family films because they have kids and they want to do stuff that that their kids would enjoy. So I mean, I get it. And, when I was younger, I used to get mad. I'm like, why is Eddie Murphy doing movies like this? Like, but I get it now. I'm almost 40. I get it now. Like, okay, I get it now. But when I at the time, I'm just like, come on, what happened to these funny, raunchy, nutty professors and stuff like I want the raunchiness, but I get it. When you get older, you don't want to keep doing that kind of humor. I get it. So, and we saw that happen. Kind of saw that happen with Martin Lawrence. So, I'm sure, but but what's interesting now in the Bad Boys films is like the characters are older now, and they're not the same brash cops that they were in the first two films. So
mm.
it's kind of cool that we kind of see that transition of the see the characters evolve as the movies went on.
And also the filmmaking evolved as well because while Michael Bay was kind of like his style of filmmaking, especially in like the mid to late 90s and such, was in vogue then. I think the what's the duo that's doing the movies now, those two blokes. Their action that they bring into the three and four, very kind of kinetic, much more modern. And I think really puts the balance back in check in regards to action and comedy. With his first movie, you had all the budgetary restrictions and such, where the comedy kind of had to take up a lot of slack, and it does. And I think when I think of Bad Boys, I think of it more as a it has its strengths more as a comedy than an action film. The last two movies, especially um, uh, the third one, Bad Boys, was it Bad Boys for Life was the third one, pretty sure.
Yeah,
Um, I think
missed
the action
opportunity
scene.
there.
What's
I
that?
didn't like that the third movie was called Bad Boys for Life, and then the fourth movie was called Bad Boys Ride or Die. I kind of wish they swapped the titles because Bad Boys for Life would have made more sense, especially the fact that like they left the ending to the third movie like open, so they
Mm,
knew there was gonna be they knew they were gonna do a fourth movie. So it always bothered me with the. It's almost like it's almost as egregious as the Rambo movies. When how the First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part Two, Rambo Three, Rambo Last Blood. I love those movies. I hate how they're titled.
right,
This is kind of the same ordeal. Like Bad Boys Two, Bad Boys Three should have been Ride or Die, and Bad Boys Ride or Die should have been Bad Boys for Life. It always
right.
always bothered me.
What would
the
number five? I'm
title.
sure they're going to make a number five. What would number five be called though? Bad Boys
I don't know.
Five, Still Alive.
Who knows? But yeah, yeah. Like I said, I get the sense they're making a fifth movie from what I understand. So I
That
don't
would
think
be.
anything's.
Go ahead.
Go
No, I was just saying. I think that would be cool. I mean, it's one thing to have action franchise when you're in your 20s, but to have them still have it now and be as popular and have the filmmaking actually improve with the later installments. I think it just shows not only how people love the chemistry between these two actors, which is undeniable. I mean, when it comes to kind of like the whole buddy cop genre, when you think of like the the dictionary setting, if you're going to look up buddy cop, in the thing, I'm sure Martin and Lawrence will be in there for sure as kind of like they're kind of like the template for what it is to do that. I mean, there's some other notable people as well, like Glover and Gibson, for example, and the Lethal Weapon films are another kind of great example of that. But I think that they can still do this at the age that they're at and still make really entertaining fare. And I'd say probably, I know you like the second one the best. I think the three and four are probably, in my opinion, probably the better ones in the franchise. And again, it comes a lot down to a lot of filmmaking ingenuity, and I think also just a certain maturity by Smith and Lawrence in that they've been around for a very long time, Smith especially, and he knows kind of like what works and what doesn't work. So if the fifth one does come out, it would be pretty cool to see. I don't know how long they can they can go though in doing these films. But if they can put out another one and make it to number five and have a nice kind of like, five, franchise kind of like a film story there, I think they would have done something really, really cool there because not many people can go back to the franchises that made them and do something terrific with it. Not every film is a Top Gun Maverick, that people try sometimes to do these legacy sequels and they don't work because the nostalgia for the first ones are so strong you can't really match up to the expectations. But I think that with the Bad Boys franchise, from film to film, I think they've gone from strength to strength. But to me, the first one has just a place in my heart because Will Smith's our action hero. He was the guy that we grew up with. He was the guy that
Yeah.
was with us for a couple of decades there at the top of the game. And I think finding when you kind of attach yourself, kind of like when you find a band for the first time and you can sort of buy all their albums and you kind of see their evolution and such. It's kind of similar in a way with a movie star, I think. You can kind of see where people might have the same kind of feeling in that if they grew up in the 80s watching Tom Cruise or something like that. It's kind of similar to what we have with Will Smith. And while the later years uh, had a lot of bumps in the road, there's no denying whatsoever that this movie was the film that really set him up for Hollywood stardom. And I think he did a great job here. And I think it's a testament that 30 years on, it's this movie still has a cultural impact that it has. And I think it's a really great kind of really great thing to kind of achieve in Hollywood to have these film. Many films come and go and people forget about them, but Bad Boys sticks around forever. Because as we say, Bad Boys is for life, right? So that's pretty much
Yeah,
how
not
it
not to
works.
mention like the comedy, both the comedy and action. And this applies to all the movies, but like you said, going back to this first one, the comedy and the action still holds up. You know how like you watch an old comedy and it's like, oh well, that's outdated. It's not funny anymore. It's not funny in the year 2025. Or oh god, those action scenes look so fake. The green screen looks so bad. You can see the strings on that. Like sometimes like some an older action or older comedy, it just doesn't hold up to me. Like you just said, this film, still everything about this movie still holds up. So if you're a younger lad and you're just seeing this for the first time, like you won't feel weird showing this to someone younger who hadn't seen it before, because this movie, they're not gonna they're they're gonna like it, because this movie still holds up. You can
Yeah.
show this to anyone who has not seen it, can discover it now and be like, oh wow, this movie's freaking awesome. So that's so I feel like this is we didn't realize this 30 years ago, but we realize now that this is a timeless movie. It's an absolutely timeless movie. It feels weird to say that, but it is.
It is in when you think about the what came afterwards with the career of Michael Bay, the career of Will Smith, pretty much the last also when it comes to looking at cinema history, the pretty much the last Don Simpson movie as well. And like he was just a for all the scandal and drugs and sex and everything else that came with it. He was like him and Bruckheimer were hitmakers. They really were. And this was like one of the big examples of that. So yeah, 30 years, Bad Boys. Great to talk to you today, Jason, about this.
Yes.
Everyone, make sure Nerd Cage Live, make sure you check it out. YouTube, Twitch, I'll have all of the links down below to hear Jason talk about more stuff about gaming, TV, movies as well, and anything else pop culture related in there. And yeah, I thank you so very much again for your time today, man. And yeah, I hope we can talk again in the future.
Yes, and we'll definitely have to have you on Nerd Cage Live and talk about whatever, movies and whatnot. And you said you're a metalhead too, so we got some. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. Have you? Usually, a lot of these Joe Blow alumni have been on Nerd Cage, so I always enjoy having them on, and it's always great having conversations. And like I said, anytime you want to talk, you know, movies, TV, and games, I'm always down. So, Matthew, thank you so much for having me on. It's been awesome.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.